This begins the cardiovascular system notes. This particular section is going to be on the heart, anatomy mostly, a little bit of physiology stuff, but mostly just the anatomy. The cardiovascular system as a whole, we've talked about a little bit as it relates to other systems, blood. We talked about the respiratory system, of course. You're going to see how the urinary system plays in a little bit at the end. But in general, it is a closed system, so like a closed loop, comprised of the heart and the blood vessels. And we'll talk about those more in a later video. The heart itself is a double pump. So it's pumping in two ways. So the right side receives blood from the body and sends it to the lungs. The left side receives blood from the lungs and sends it out to the body. So you'll see there are some structural differences between the left and right sides of the heart that are related to those two different functions. And then the other portion are the blood vessels, as I said, and we'll talk more about those later. In general, there are arteries, which carry blood away from the heart. There are veins, which carry blood toward the heart. And then there are capillaries, and those are sort of the link between arteries and veins. Here you can see kind of, obviously it's a really simplified version, but here we have the right side of the heart. So veins bring blood into the right side of the heart. It pumps the deoxygenated blood away to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries. Blood gets oxygenated in the lung, returns to the left side of the heart via the pulmonary veins, and then gets pumped out up to the brain, down to the rest of the body, and then back up again. So it's continuously looping, dropping off oxygen at the cells, picking up waste, and then heading back to the lungs for reoxygenation and to get rid of carbon dioxide. So constantly looping around. Here is a view of the heart in situ. So you can see it's in the area called the mediastinum. It's right kind of behind the sternum, slightly off to the left. There's the diaphragm. The lungs would be on either side. Here you can see this is anterior, posterior, the two lungs, and then the heart kind of sitting right inside. Here the lungs have been pulled back a little bit to let you see the heart a little bit better, and you can see where the vessels come in, the aorta going out to the rest of the body, the apex, kind of the base of the heart is there. Here again, another picture. This is a transverse section. The two lungs are there, the esophagus, the aorta, which is an artery, so you can see it's really robust there. And then here is the heart. You can see the right ventricle there. It's kind of a weird section. The right ventricle is there, and then the left ventricle is much more robust, is there. And the heart, like many of the organs that we've talked about, has a membrane surrounding it called the pericardium around the heart. It's a fibrous outer layer, and then the inner layer with some fluid in between to help reduce friction, allow the heart to beat smoothly without like getting caught up on something, because that would be unpleasant. The visceral pericardium is right up against the external surface of the heart. The parietal pericardium then is on the outer edge. This just is informational. The heart wall is made up of 3 layers. Epicardium, which is the outside. The myocardium, which is like the muscle. Myo, remember that means muscle. And then the endocardium is like the lining, the inner surface. Okay, this is the part where it starts to get important. And these are the things that you really need to remember. So the heart is a double pump. The right and left sides act separately. And the heart is made up of 4 chambers. There are 2 atria, a right and left atrium, and then there are right and left ventricles. So the atria are where the blood comes in, and then the ventricles pump it out either to the lungs or the rest of the body. Here you can see the right side of the heart. Remember that just pumps blood from the heart to the lungs to get reoxygenated. So you can see that it's not super muscular, which makes sense because the lungs are like not very far away from the heart. They're just right on either side. The left side of the heart has to pump blood to the entire body, and so it's much thicker and stronger and more robust because it's got to pump a lot farther. So if you just had a single like pumping pressure, so to speak, you might damage the lungs, or you wouldn't be able to get blood far enough throughout the body. So this double pump system really speaks to the 2 different functions of the right and the left sides of the heart. So right V for right ventricle, left V for left ventricle. But look really at those 2 different structures. So it's very important because of the way the blood is flowing. You don't want like deoxygenated blood, for instance, squishing back out of the right side of the heart and then like trying to go back to the body. So it's important that blood flow occurs only in one direction. And for that to happen, the heart has within it 4 valves. So there are 2, 1 per each, atrioventricular valves. So there are 2 atrioventricular valves. There's the tricuspid valve that's on the right side, so between the right atrium and the right ventricle. And then there's the bicuspid on the left side. So you should always try before you buy. So those each help keep blood that has entered the ventricles from going back into the atria. There are also semilunar valves at the entrance to the aorta and at the entrance to the pulmonary arteries, so that blood from the ventricles, once it gets pumped out of the heart, it continues on its pathway. So you'll see those in just a minute. So the pulmonary and aortic semilunar valves are from the ventricles to those blood vessels, those arteries. Here you can see the different AV, atrioventricular valves. Well, you can see one of them. So on the right side, you have the tricuspid, try before you buy. So you can see the 3 sort of cusps there. They all come together. On the left side, the left atrioventricular valve, or the bicuspid, is also sometimes called the mitral valve, after a bishop's mitre, because it's 2 semicircles that come together to make that valve. The semilunar valves are called semilunar because you have 3 sort of half moon shapes. So these are in between the ventricles and both the pulmonary arteries on the right side and the aorta on the left side. And here again is a view of the semilunar valves as well. So you can kind of see their nice half moon shape there. So the way the valves work is as the blood is pumped, when the heart squeezes, it forces the valves open. And then as the next part of the heart squeezes, like as the ventricle contracts, it pushes up against the valve and the valve closes. So the AV valves are held in place by what are called chordae tendineae, which are right here. These are attached to papillary muscles. So they're little like papillae, so little outcroppings, little bumps basically. That the chordae tendineae are attached to, and the chordae tendineae attached to the valves as well. And so those close to help prevent backflow. So like I said, the blood is always flowing in one direction through the heart and through the body. Here, this is a nice picture. Shows those papillary muscles. You can see the chordae tendineae, and then you can see the valves there. So here is the right side of the heart. You can tell because it's not very muscular. So this is the tricuspid, and then the pulmonary semilunar valve. And then here we would have the bicuspid or the mitral valve, and then the aortic semilunar valve on the left side. So notice this is much more muscular, much less muscular. This has to pump far. This doesn't have to pump nearly as far, just to the lungs. Here again you can see those chordae tendineae attached to the valve. So this is a nice picture that shows the way the valves operate as blood is flowing through the heart. So take a minute, maybe pause for a second and kind of read through this to see what's happening. There are a couple of great big vessels associated with the heart. We'll talk more about other blood vessels a little bit later on. But the major ones attached to the heart, you have the aorta, so that leaves the left ventricle, pumps blood out to the body. The aorta is kind of an arch-shaped vessel. As it comes out of the heart, kind of goes like that. So a lot of times you'll hear about the aortic arch. That's what they're talking about. There are 2 pulmonary arteries which bring deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle out to the lungs. There are the vena cavae, superior and inferior vena cava. So those bring blood in to the right atrium of the heart. So if we're talking blood flow entering the heart, blood's going to come from the vena cava into the right atrium, go into the right ventricle, and then leave through the pulmonary arteries, and then come back in through the 4 pulmonary veins to the left atrium. Now the blood is oxygenated, and then it will get pumped out through the aortic arch. So right side, left side. All right, so that does it for part 1, heart anatomy. Next time we'll talk about blood vessels and about the conduction systems, like how the heart actually pumps. Yeah, talk to you later.